Caligula! Shouts echoed through the palace corridor. Sandals scraped marble as blades flashed at close range. The emperor staggered beneath repeated blows, pinned against a narrow passage wall. He tried to shield his face. He failed. On the 24th of January AD 41, Gaius Julius Caesar Germanicus, known as Caligula, was attacked inside a cryptoporticus beneath the imperial palace on the Palatine Hill in Rome. He was 28 years old. Records show he had ruled nearly 4 years, gaining notoriety for erratic decrees, public humiliations of senators, and heavy financial exactions. Suetonius later described a climate of fear within the court. The Praetorian Guard was assigned to protect him. Some of its officers had begun to conspire. The named leader was Cassius Dio, a tribune of the guard. Authorities determined Dio had been publicly mocked by the emperor and resented repeated insults. Witnesses later recalled that Caligula was returning from games honoring Augustus. When the corridor narrowed, the setting was controlled. Escape routes were limited. Then came the confrontation. Steel struck first. Caligula cried out. The corridor trapped the sound. Guards closed in. Silence followed. It was over in seconds. What is documented is this: multiple assailants stabbed him, including Dio. Accounts vary on his final words. Some sources claim he shouted for help. Others report only confusion. His wife, Caessonia, was killed shortly after. Their infant daughter was also murdered. Containment spread rapidly. A senator later admitted he felt relief. The body lay briefly where it fell. It was later transported discreetly and given a hurried cremation. Official reports confirmed the Senate initially discussed restoring the Republic. That attempt collapsed within hours. The Praetorian Guard located Claudius, Caligula's uncle, hiding behind a curtain in the palace complex. They escorted him under armed protection to their camp. He was proclaimed emperor there. Caligula once ordered executions from the throne. Now his own guards ended his life in a corridor. Claudius assumed power under military backing. Cassius Dio was executed days later. The palace doors were sealed. Nero, hoofbeats pounded along the darkened road. The emperor's cloak dragged through mud as he fled the capital. Behind him, mounted riders searched nearby estates. He asked repeatedly if anyone remained loyal. No one answered. On the 9th of June AD 68, Nero Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus died outside Rome at a suburban villa near the 4th milestone on the Via Salaria. He was 30 years old. Records show he had ruled nearly 14 years, presiding over executions, confiscations, and the Great Fire's aftermath. The Senate had declared him a public enemy. Galba, governor of Hispania Tarraconensis, had been recognized as rival emperor. The Praetorian Guard withdrew protection after a bribe promise collapsed. Recognition came quickly. Nero attempted to reach the Tiber docks. Authorities determined ships were no longer available. He turned instead to the villa of his freedman Phaon. Witnesses later recalled he traveled with a small group, including Epaphroditus. The gates were opened quietly. Inside, he paced and asked for a dagger. Accounts vary on whether he hesitated from fear or indecision. What is documented is this: he ordered a grave to be dug in advance. Exposure deepened. A messenger arrived with confirmation the Senate had condemned him to death by beating. He reportedly whispered that he should have listened to advisors. His own men avoided eye contact. The sound of approaching horsemen grew clearer beyond the trees. Nero pressed the blade to his throat. His hand shook. Epaphroditus assisted the thrust. He fell to the floor. Silence followed. The regime ended there. Official reports confirmed soldiers entered moments later and found him dying. One officer attempted to stop the bleeding. It failed. His body was transported under limited escort and cremated modestly. Burial took place in the mausoleum of the Demidi on the Pincian Hill. The Senate ordered public statues removed. Informers were targeted in reprisals. He once ordered public executions. Now he died hunted and concealed. Galba entered Rome days later. The Julio-Claudian line was finished. The villa stood empty. Water sloshed against marble as attendants rushed from the chamber. The emperor struggled inside the bath, arms striking blindly at the man above him. Steam filled the room. The door was barred from outside. On the 31st of December AD 192, Commodus was killed inside his palace on the Celian Hill in Rome. He was 31 years old. Records show he had ruled 12 years, increasingly presenting himself as a gladiator and renaming Rome after himself. Senators documented erratic decrees and executions. Public funds were strained by spectacles. Resentment widened within the court. The conspiracy formed close to him. Authorities determined the plot involved Marcia, his companion, and Quintus Aemilius Letus. The Praetorian prefect, Eclectus, a chamberlain, was also named. Witnesses later recalled that Commodus planned to appear in the Colosseum on New Year's Day, dressed as a gladiator consul. Accounts vary on whether Marcia discovered a written list of intended executions that included her name. What is documented is this: poison was first administered in his wine. It failed. Commodus vomited violently, but survived the dose. Recognition spread among the conspirators that exposure was imminent. Letus ordered immediate action. A professional wrestler, Narcissus, was summoned to the bath chamber. The emperor entered the water to recover. The door closed behind him. Narcissus stepped forward. Hands tightened around his neck. Commodus thrashed in the bath. Tiles echoed with impact. Steam blurred the air. Then nothing moved. The regime ended there. Official reports confirm the body was removed discreetly before dawn. It was transported under guard and later interred in the mausoleum of Hadrian. After initial hesitation, the Senate convened quickly and declared him a public enemy. His statues were torn down. His names were erased from inscriptions. A guard later admitted he felt relief. He once staged executions in the arena. Now he died unarmed in his own bath. Pertinax was proclaimed emperor within hours. Narcissus was later executed under Septimius Severus. The palace gates were sealed. Pertinax, boots thundered across the palace courtyard. Armed men forced the gates and pushed past servants. The emperor stepped forward unarmored, raising a hand to speak. He did not retreat. On the 28th of March AD 193, Publius Helvius Pertinax was killed inside the imperial palace in Rome. He was 66 years old. Records show he had ruled only 87 days after succeeding Commodus. A former teacher and provincial governor, he attempted financial reform and military discipline. The treasury was depleted. The Praetorian Guard expected rewards. Tension hardened quickly. Authorities determined Pertinax refused to pay the guard the full donative they demanded. He insisted on restoring order and cutting excess privileges. The Praetorian prefect at the time, Titus Flavius Sulpicius, struggled to contain unrest within the camp. Witnesses later recalled that approximately 300 guards marched to the palace. Accounts vary on whether Pertinax was urged to flee. What is documented is this: he chose to confront them directly in the courtyard. Recognition spread among the soldiers. He appealed to their loyalty. He promised gradual payment. The crowd pressed closer. A soldier named Tungrianus reportedly struck first. Swords were drawn. Pertinax was hit and stumbled backward. Marble steps beneath him. Then silence. The regime ended there. Official reports confirmed his body was removed under guard and later cremated with senatorial honors. His head had been displayed briefly on a spear during the chaos. The Senate convened in fear and confirmed his death. Order collapsed across the capital. A senator later admitted he wept. He once enforced discipline on mutinous troops. Now undisciplined troops killed him in his own palace. What followed was immediate transaction. The Praetorian Guard returned to their camp and effectively auctioned the throne. Didius Julianus offered the highest payment and was proclaimed emperor by the Guard. The Senate ratified the choice under pressure. Provincial armies refused recognition. Civil war began within weeks. Pertinax's short rule exposed the fragility of imperial authority. His death marked the start of the year of the 5 emperors. The palace gates stood open that night. Caracalla. Dust lifted from the roadside as the imperial escort slowed. The emperor stepped away from his horse, dismissing guards to relieve himself behind a low embankment. A single soldier followed at close distance. No one intervened. On the 8th of April AD 117, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, known as Caracalla, was killed near Caria in Mesopotamia while traveling toward a temple of the moon god. He was 29 years old. Records show he had ruled as sole emperor since murdering his brother Geta in AD 111. His reign was marked by mass executions and the extension of Roman citizenship. Through the Constitutio Antoniana, campaigns against Parthia strained resources. Discipline inside the ranks had weakened. Tension moved with the column. Authorities determined the assassin was a soldier named Julius Martialis. Cassius Dio later recorded that Martialis held a personal grievance, allegedly over a denied promotion. Witnesses later recalled the emperor had minimal protection at the moment he stopped. Accounts vary on whether Martialis acted alone or with encouragement from the Praetorian prefect, Marcus Opellius Macrinus. What is documented is this: the blade was concealed until the final step. Recognition came too late. Martialis rushed forward and struck. Caracalla reeled backward onto the dirt. Horses scattered. The open plain offered no cover. For a moment, no one moved. It was over in seconds. Official reports confirmed Martialus was cut down immediately by other guards. The body of the emperor was lifted onto a litter and transported back toward the camp. Under heavy escort, soldiers sealed the perimeter. Confusion spread across the ranks. A centurion later admitted he feared retaliation. He once ordered his brother killed without trial. Now a common soldier killed him on open ground. Macrinus assumed command of the troops within hours. Messages were dispatched to Rome announcing the death and a new emperor. The Senate later ratified the transfer of power. Caracalla's remains were eventually cremated and interred in the mausoleum of Hadrian. The Severan line fractured that day. The road near Carrhae fell silent. Claudius. He lurched from the banquet couch and gripped the table edge. Servants froze as the emperor began to retch, struggling to breathe between spasms. Dishes clattered onto the mosaic floor. The room emptied in confusion. On the 13th of October AD 54, Tiberius Claudius Caesar Augustus Germanicus died in Rome. Likely inside the imperial residence on the Palatine Hill, he was 63 years old. Records show he had ruled nearly 13 years, expanding the empire into Britain and reforming provincial administration. He survived earlier plots and public ridicule. His household, however, was divided by succession. Suspicion formed within the palace. Authorities later focused on Agrippina the Younger, his fourth wife. She had secured adoption of her son Nero and maneuvered him ahead of Claudius's biological son. Britannicus, Tacitus, and Suetonius both describe a dinner where mushrooms were served. Accounts vary on whether poison was mixed directly into the food or administered later by a physician. What is documented is this: Claudius fell violently ill after the meal. Recognition came quickly. Witnesses later recalled that Agrippina restricted access to his chamber. The court physician Xenophon was summoned. Some sources allege a feather tipped with poison was used under the pretext of inducing vomiting. Others dispute that detail. Inside the room, Claudius convulsed and collapsed onto his bed. Lamps flickered. Voices hushed. He stopped breathing. The regime ended there. Official reports confirmed that news of his death was delayed until Nero's position was secured. The Praetorian Guard was briefed and instructed to support the new emperor. Claudius's body was transported with ceremony and later cremated on the Campus Martius. The Senate granted him deification. A palace attendant later said nothing felt sudden. He once approved death sentences from the tribunal. Now decisions about his own death were made behind closed doors. Britannicus was sidelined immediately. Nero was presented to the guard as rightful successor. Agrippina appeared publicly beside him. Within months, Britannicus was dead under separate circumstances. Claudius was placed among the gods. The palace doors remained shut. Augustus. He struggled to rise from his couch as fever tightened his chest. Attendants leaned in, listening for steady breath. Messages were halted at the doorway. No one spoke above a whisper. On the 19th of August AD 14, Gaius Octavius, known as Augustus, died at Nola in Campania. He was 75 years old. Records show he had ruled for more than 4 decades, ending civil wars and establishing the Principate. He presented himself as first citizen, not king. Power, however, rested in his hands. Succession remained controlled but fragile. Concern shifted toward Livia. Authorities later noted that Livia Drusilla, his wife, managed access during his final days. Tacitus reported rumors that figs from the garden were poisoned. Accounts vary on whether Augustus died of natural illness or subtle interference. What is documented is this: he had been in declining health and had traveled south with Tiberius weeks earlier. Recognition followed quietly. Witnesses later recalled that Augustus summoned Tiberius privately before his condition worsened. He reportedly asked whether he had played his part well. His breathing grew shallow. Curtains were drawn. The chamber stilled. He stopped moving. The regime did not collapse. Official reports confirmed that his death was initially kept from the public until Tiberius secured military loyalty. Couriers were dispatched to the Praetorian Guard in Rome. The Senate was informed under controlled conditions. His body was transported from Nola to Rome in a staged procession, resting overnight in towns along the route. A veteran later said the streets felt uncertain. Augustus once declared the Republic restored. Now a single successor inherited his authority. The funeral was elaborate. His body was cremated in the Campus Martius. The Senate voted to deify him as Divus Augustus. Livia was granted the title Augusta. Tiberius assumed power without open resistance. What followed was precedent. Authority passed through one household. The imperial system endured. The mausoleum doors closed. Constantine the Great. He struggled to sit upright as fever weakened his grip. Advisors stepped back while physicians checked his pulse. Orders were whispered, then cancelled. The tent fell quiet. On the 22nd of May AD 337, Flavius Valerius Constantinus, known as Constantine, died near Nicomedia, likely at an imperial villa in the suburb of Ancirona. He was 65 years old. Records show he had ruled more than 3 decades, defeating rivals including Maxentius and Licinius. He legalized Christianity and founded Constantinople as a new imperial capital. Authority had been centralized under his command. Succession was already arranged. Authorities determined Constantine had divided administrative responsibilities among his sons, Constantine II, Constantius II, and Constans. The Bishop Eusebius of Nicomedia was present during his final illness. Witnesses later recalled that Constantine requested baptism shortly before death, a delay that has drawn historical debate. Accounts vary on whether he intended this timing for theological reasons or political caution. One is documented as this: he received baptism while gravely ill. Recognition of the end came gradually. His breathing slowed across several hours. Attendants monitored the chamber. Military guards secured the perimeter. No uprising followed. Then he stopped responding. He was 65 years old. Official reports confirmed that his body was placed in a golden coffin and transported to Constantinople under armed escort. The cortege moved slowly across Asia Minor, cities along the route staged formal receptions. In Constantinople, the body lay in state within the palace complex before burial in the Church of the Holy Apostles. A court official later wrote that many wept openly. He once marched on Rome with an army. Now his body entered a city he designed. After his death, what is documented is this: tensions among his sons escalated into purges within the extended imperial family. Several male relatives were executed to secure succession. The Senate in Constantinople affirmed the new rulers. The empire did not fracture immediately. Constantine's reign ended in bed, not in battle. The dynasty he shaped survived him. The capital he founded remained.